Hi, I'm Mark, and in this video we will circumnavigate the core functional circuit of the Whoa Excel Addin. This software is for Windows only, and it requires a modern version of Excel Desktop. There are good reasons for those limitations, and we won't discuss them right now. Moving on. The thesis behind this software is that the people who best understand the problems that businesses seek to automate are the ones who are closest to the work being done. And yet, these same people are forced to operate at tech level 2 due to severe technology restrictions imposed by IT. This is where I come in with the heavy artillery. The add-in boosts you to tech level 7. It will create an unfair playing field that is tilted to your advantage. The entire add-in, it lives in a single Excel file, is less than 3 megabytes. You just drop it into your Excel start folder and it's ready to rock. Warning, there will be code. Please do not worry about not understanding the code you see in this video. Just trust, if you keep watching, the dots will connect. It's like a movie that starts out confusing in the beginning, and then 20 minutes in, everything makes sense. Your brain can learn to play Halo 3 and learn 25 different weapons, okay? It can develop an intuition behind the physics of lobbing a grenade. The idea that anyone watching this video can't learn these basic code fundamentals is just crazy talk. Lastly, I will individually assist every single user of this add-in if you want help. And to guarantee that, I put a hard cap on signups. So if the cap is reached, new account registration will automatically be blocked. And I will only lift the cap after I'm confident every existing user is A-OK. The next thing to understand is how the models work and like what even is a model. So when you create an add-in, note this Control-Shift-M up here. I'm going to use that shortcut instead of clicking from now on. It takes you to the models list view. So we see there's 5 models in here right now. These first 3, Sheet Info, Shelter, and TestCat, those are system models. We'll see them some, but the important thing to know is that they come with every host workbook, and they really are not related to what we're doing at all. Normally, I just hide them. They're grayed out. These bottom 2, multifamily amenity and multifamily rent comp unit, that's these 2 guys right here. We're going to build the property one together. These ones are grayed out because they have no records. You can see the record count there, 0 and 0. Like if I went to TestCat here and I deleted all these rows, and then we go back to models, now TestCat is gray. Each model is comprised of fields. So if I go to the amenity one and click inspect fields, you can see it's got the name of the amenity and some other fields that I don't care to explain right now. But every model has fields. That's the important takeaway. Okay. All the data lives is hermetic within Excel. So like when we import amenity data in a minute, it's going to live locally on a hidden worksheet. I'm stressing this because I could see IT or someone could be wigging out. I assure you that in the event that you get caught in your stealth endeavor, that when we pop the trunk open, and I will happily open source code for your IT department and explain and show them any detail that they want to see, it'll be clean. So I don't take any data from you. Like I don't collect anything except an API key that I gave you in the first place. Okay. 80% of projects are going to require some kind of external data. So the first thing I want to do is look at how you take data from outside and we fill up these models. So let's pause and then we'll do that. Okay, so I'm going to hit Alt F11 to open the VBA code window. This is just built into Excel. You already have it. And I'm going to go to this first module here, Demo 1 Remote API. This is a standalone module that I created solely for your benefit. It does not use the add-in. and and nothing calls these functions. So all I want you to see here is how a request is made. So these three functions, amenity, property, and unit, they correspond exactly to these models that we're talking about here. So when I hit F5, it's going to run this function. It's going to open up, let's start with the amenity one. It'll open up a request. This is built into every Windows machine. And it's going to attach some information, API key, whatever, and it's going to send it. So, and we get back data. So this data right here is coming from a web server every time I hit that. And let's see. There's something here. Yeah, so I do have something that I wanted to use. It's like this pretty print JSON. That'll give us like a prettier view. So it uses the addin a little bit, but it's just nicer to look at this compared to that other chunk of text that we saw a minute ago. I'm just going to stash some of these data on the side in a notepad. I'm going to just keep going for time. So this is what the property API looks like. You've got the name of the property, program, tenancy, whatever. Let's steal this guy. Drop it in the notepad too. And finally, the units one. F5, you can see the different floor plans that are coming through. So this is going to correspond to these guys. All right, and I'll steal that guy as well. I don't know if we'll need this. I'm just dumping it in a notepad file like over here to the side. Okay, so that's how the data, it's like kind of like, this is how the raw data looks when it comes over the wire. You very well might be working with something like this. You don't have to have an API to get data in. Like you can import data from any sort of CSV, like pretty much any structured format you have, and I will help you do that. I have examples online. I'm going to put this all the code that we look at today, I'll put on GitHub so it's open for anyone to see. Overall, imports they're not a big deal. It's not a high risk. It's not a high risk endeavor. So now that you've seen how the data looks, we'll go ahead and we'll do an import. All right, so I'm going to go over to this module down here, multifamily imports. And right here at the top, we already have a function stubbed, and it's called refresh records multifamily amenity. So what this is going to do is it's going to call the amenity API, the first one that we looked at over there, and it's going to pull all of the data down, and it's going to seed it into this multifamily amenity model. So let's go just to this worksheet. We can go to the data worksheet. It'll probably be more fun to see it from here. Shrink this over. I'm going to put my cursor in here, and I'm going to hit F5 to run this function. Boom. 56 records were created, 0 modified, 0 deleted. If I run it again, nothing happens. Oh, well, I mean, 56 were modified, 0 were created, but nothing happens visually. That's because every record is already here. If I were to delete volleyball court, don't do it like that. And then I ran it again. Now we can see 1 record was created, 55 were modified. That's because volleyball court, it didn't find an ID for it, so it had to create it again. Okay. Let's just look at the code really fast. So it queries the data. This is just a collection full of dictionaries. Those are the 2 data structures that you kind of need to know. Dictionary and collection. All right. There's 25 different weapons in Halo, but there's really only 2 data structures. With just those 2 data structures, you can get by quite far in Excel VBA. So this is the raw data. And then this DB, you'll see it 1,000 times, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But we call this method called db.ingest external records. If I were to write that line again, I would type db dot, and then see all these methods that just appear. Most of them, like, you don't really need. Get records by ID, get them by attribute, blah, 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 blah. Ingest external records and get all records are some of the ones you'll use a lot. All right, so now that we imported data, we can actually see this one, multifamily amenity is no longer gray. We've got data in here. Cool. I'm going to stop it for that one. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at some just basic code that references that model. Now that we actually have data in there, we can do some stuff with it. So once again, I'm going to run this routine just by pressing F5. And let's clear out this. This is called the immediate window. This is where, when you do debug.print, that's where it goes. So I'm going to hit F5. Maybe I'll step through it. I'll step through it one time. So the yellow line is where we are now. So now we're about to do this yellow line. db.record count is 56. That's the 56 amenities. Okay? Let me stop it. All right. So now let's look at all the amenities in a loop. So you see the code for amenity as class multifamily amenity. That's this guy down here. The add-in created that for us with all the fields that we specified. For each amenity in db.getAllRecords, print the amenity.name. So if I put a period right here, the dot operator it's called, I can see like the various things like name, NLG alias, remark. That's like a comment. So I'm going to hit F5 once again, and it prints them all out. And finally, let's do this last one down here. Just kind of get rid of all this stuff, actually. No, I can't get rid of it because I'm giving you all this source code. Clearing this out. All right, so this is saying dim library amenity. We're making a new variable. Same class multifamily amenity as before. CLS stands for class. And we're going to, instead of doing db.getAllRecords, we're going to do db.getRecord by ID. And we're looking for the record with ID 15. So, if we pull it up, that's going to be library. All right. It prints it out, library.name. Library.amenity name is in fact library. You can also do like a message box. Library.name, library.nlg alias, a library. NLG is like natural language generation. That's when you want to create a paragraph of text or something that references these things, like what amenities a property will have or what amenities it currently has. Okay, so that is the most basic sort of introduction to how the dot operator works, and that's it. That's it. These other two down here, these are going to get a little bit more advanced. They're commented out right now because we have not created the big property model yet. So if I uncomment this and I were to hit compile, it's going to say variable not defined. Because there is no multifamily rent comp model. We have amenity and we have rent comp unit because I seeded those. Anyways, the next thing we need to do is go ahead and create that model. So let's do that. Okay, to create a model, I'm going to hit Control-Shift-H just to go back to the home page. To create a model, you click this Models button, and then green, Create Model. I'm going to type in multifamily rent comp. The data source is web. This comes down to where does the ID come from, all right? Things like TestCat and Shelter, those test models, there is no external system that tracks test cats. So the workbook, the add-in will issue the IDs. But for a web model, it means that some external database controls the ID. Include local table. So most of the time you'll do this as true, but your data and the fields in each model basically split two ways. The remote models, those are fields that should never change in Excel. So like the name of an apartment property, you would not change that in Excel. You would go to the detail page on the web app for that property, edit the name, and then you would sync the data back here. Whereas with a local field, that could be like concluded rent. Like your web database has no idea like about concluded rents. Okay, it wasn't built that way. So that's really where the real value, like this sort of chimera system where you can have one model that's made up of data, some of which is owned by somewhere else, and some of which corresponds to fields that you create. We're going to say the row limit is 1,000. I don't see why you would need more than 1,000 properties in one workbook, maybe in like the Bronx. And that's all we're going to do. So I'm going to click Create Model. Yes. All right, it made the new model. Let me pause a second and I'll show you what it did. All right, so what happened when we created the model? I guess first, when I created this host workbook and you weren't here, it added some registry worksheets. Some of them are visible over here. It added name ranges, and it added these modules. So this is before I created any model myself. These host shortcuts, events, constructors, commands, those just come automatically with a host workbook. And we're going to get into most of those in a minute. But what we just did now is we actually created a new model. So what happened under the hood when I clicked that OK button is that this class module was created, class multifamily rent comp. That's VBA class module. These three constructors, or the constructor for the database for that model, and the constructor for the actual, to like get one of those multifamily rent comp objects. Those words will make sense. If they don't now, they will. And finally, it created some worksheet artifacts. So it added all models get a remote worksheet no matter what. Not all models get a local table worksheet. So I told you the difference between the local and the remote. The remote being something we cannot change here in Excel. An example of a model that would not have a local table worksheet is like the multifamily amenity. Like we don't have any fields that we save on the amenity here. So there is no local table worksheet. It's like purely a reference model. There's no evidence of that here. Okay, that's fine. The other things that adding a model did is it added a row to this model registry sheet right here, multifamily rent comp, and a field registry row. So there's this big registry sheet. Mind you, these sheets typically are kept deeply hidden. I have them out now so that you can see them, but it added, there's a couple fields that were there. So let's see. Whenever you create a new model, it automatically comes with these dummy fields. Dummy remote, and if it has a local table, then also dummy local. So see, and a field is just a column header on the table. That's all it is. Okay. I happen to control both sides of this. Like I control this the web site that we've been looking at here. Right now it's just running like over here in a little PowerShell window. But you probably will not. You'll probably have like a SaaS provider or someone that you'll have to get the data from. Okay, let me pause. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is like get some real fields in there. So like this dummy local, dummy remote. These have nothing to do with apartments. All right, that's just there because it was easier for me to build the add-in to have 2 cells here and not just the ID. So I have this reference sheet here, and there's like 3 groups of fields I want to add. So there's 2 ways you can add a field. One of them is like through, going into this inspect fields and clicking add field. When you're adding just 1 or 2 fields, that's a good way to go. But you can also directly paste them. Just watch. So let's first take this name one, and I'm going to go to the remote worksheet. If you weren't sure which one was the remote worksheet, you could just click on the field and it would take you there. I'm going to rename this column header from dummy remote to name, and then I'm going to recalculate the workbook. It will detect the change. So the text is maybe small and hard to read, but it has 2 migrations. One of them is inserting a new column called name, and the other one is deleting a column called dummy remote. If it all looks good, press yes. Successfully applied 2 migrations. If I go back to that field inspector, now dummy remote is gone. It's been replaced with name. For the other fields, let's just take them like this and paste special values transpose. All right. Maybe my OCD will force me to make these a little bit bigger. All right, I'm going to Control-Shift-R. That's the same as the reload button on the ribbon. It's detecting 8 migrations. Let's do them. Successfully applied 8. Now, if we go again to the fields, those are all our fields. Notice that they came in as variant fields. There's different field types. Most of them are really obvious, okay? Like text field, char field. I'll talk about them in a minute, but essentially you can just roll with variant field. For variant field, what you do is can be anything. It's not restricted. So we'll roll with variant field for a minute. Okay, let me pause a second. All right, so let me tell you what adding these fields did. So we've looked at creating a new host workbook, creating a new model, and then what we just did is add fields. So it basically just adds 1 column on either the remote or local table worksheet, depending on where you added it or what field type you specified, field table type. And it also adds this code. So this code is living here on multifamily rent comp unit. You see street address, effective rent date, total units. All of this code just dropped in here by the addin. And this is the code that lets the dot operator, lets us type things like debug.print, property.city or whatever. And for local fields, it will let us actually say property.city equals, Albuquerque. In this case, city is a remote field. We would not want to change the city here in Excel because then it would be out of sync with the database. We want to force the user to just go to the database, change it, and resync it. Maybe a better way of saying that is we want to make it a really easy, happy path for the user to just hit a shortcut, load the detail page instantly, change the record, and then update just that 1 record, or if they want all records for that model. Okay, so that's what happens when we add fields. When we edit or delete fields, it's a similar thing. All right. Okay. Now that we have some fields for this model, multifamily rent comp, we can build the import. So I'm going to hit Alt F11 again, and here on the multifamily imports module. Now that this model exists, I can uncomment this, and we won't get any of those compile errors. So this script right here is very similar to the one that did the amenities, okay? the difference is there's 55,000 records or something in that web database for apartment properties, and we're only interested in this subset of them. I'll show you in the full example of this workbook, like the developed version, how we filter by comp lists, and you pick which comp list you want to import. That for now, we're just taking this set of comps in Bastrop, Texas. So the script is very similar in nature. We get the DB, we call ingest, and we pass into ingest this web records, which I call it all remote records in this one, but same thing. It's a collection full of dictionaries where each dictionary is one of the records. It's going to correspond like basically exactly to these guys here. Name, program, tenancy, total units. Those are the same as the columns fields that we just created. So I'll show you how to run it from a command button. Let's go here. Developer design mode is when you want to work. When you're in design mode, if you click on a button, it won't activate it. It'll like move it around. So I'm just going to copy paste that button. I'm going to right click and go to properties. I'm going to say import rent comps. And then we're going to get the name of this function and just say call that function. All right. I'll split my screen. No, how will I do this? I won't run it from the button this time. I'll run it from here. All right, I'm going to put my cursor in it. I'm on the remote worksheet for a multifamily rent comp, so we should see the data just fly in. There it is. It just ignores fields. Anything in the mapping that's passed to db.ingest external records, if it doesn't exist as a field, it just trims it out. It ignores it. All right, so what to note here in this script? There's not much. There's stuff that goes on under the hood that's abstracted for you in ingest external records. Some of that stuff is like chunking big requests into smaller batches just for network efficiency. That is not, I don't think it's worth it. I'm not going to discuss that right now. Okay, so cool. So 2 of our 3 models we have data for: multifamily rent comp and multifamily amenity. There's one model left, but we're going to do a couple things. We're going to play around with the rent comp model for a minute before we bring the unit model in. So the first feature for us to look at is this generic form system. So if I hit Control-Shift-M, the same as this, clicking this, and we click on multifamily rent comp, it's going to say we haven't specified any fields yet for list view. Do we want to do that now? Sure. It shows us all the fields, so I'm just going to I'll just take, I don't know, some of them. All right, and now just like we saw with TestCat earlier, we can see the records here. Things to notice about this list view right now. The text for the rows is all black. We can customize that, and we will shortly. We can filter records, so if I type in like senior and hit enter, it'll filter down to just the senior records. Remove the filter. We can sort, so if I click on a header, it'll sort, ascending, and here's descending. It's important to note that this is not changing the order of the records as they appear on the worksheet. That would be like the DB model sort, and we're also going to do that in a minute. So this would be more for like quick analysis, this filter and this like table sort. There's a button here for sort records. If you click it, it says we haven't defined any sort columns yet, so it's not going to do anything. But notice it tells you, define them on the model registry worksheet, then reload the workbook. It gives you a clue. Let's see. If I double click on one of these, it's going to say the same thing. It's going to want to open the edit view, and it's going to tell me, hey, you have not specified fields for edit view. Do you want to do it? Yes. All right, again, I'm just going to take, random fields. Okay. Now, if I double click on one of these comps, it will open up the edit view. Notice that everything is grayed out and disabled. The reason is because these are remote fields. Remember, remote fields cannot be changed inside of Excel. You change them in the remote source, the web app, and then you sync the data back. There's this view on web button. Once again, I click it, I'm going to get this clue, model multifamily rent comp has not defined any behavior for custom get web edit URL. That's just a tiny function, and we're going to put it in. Okay. We can delete the record, delete all records. I think that covers the list view. No, last thing. Notice the formatting on effective rent date. You see how it's all messed up? So if we go and we look at that column, there's nothing wrong with it. It looks fine in the worksheet, but up here it's like it's all messed up. That's because a date in Excel is stored. It's stored as a number. So in short, the way that we can fix this is we can go to that field, wherever it is, effective rent date, and we can change it from a variant field to be a date field specifically. Okay? After making that change, we go back into this again. Now our dates look good. Okay. Good. Let's pause. Okay, the next thing to notice is that so far I've been like clicking into models and then double clicking each time I want to get to the record list view, the generic list view for the property model. And that's annoying. So what I'll show you next is how we can shorten that process. So I will add a button here. Call it rent comps list view. Okay? And inside of this button procedure, I will type call open form, and then I'm going to hit Control Space, generic record create, edit, or list. We want the list view. All right? Open the parentheses is going to tell me what it wants. This bold parameter, WB host. That's this workbook, the host workbook, and the name of the model. So I could just type in multifamily rent comp, but the better way to do that is to reference a constant like this. So model name and then underscore multifamily rent comp. These other two parameters that are in brackets, those are optional. We don't need them. Other three parameters, we don't need those. In one of the YouTube playlists, I build an expense classifier project from the ground up, and we use all of those. All right, so let's test it out. If I click on this, there. So now instead of going through this model list view, we have a way to get directly to the list view for those rent comps. But this is probably not good enough, right? Like, what are the odds that, you're on the home sheet when you need it? And if you're an appraiser, if you're doing, an appraisal, you need to constantly be able to reference data points when you're writing your report. It's like, what's the, gross physical square footage of the building, or whatever it is that you need to know, net leasable area, I don't know. I just know that continuously you need to reference that data. So you really want to have it, fast. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a custom shortcut, a keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-C, and that'll open up to open up this form. I'm going to centralize everything, so I'm going to right-click down here in the modules, Insert Module, click on the module, and I'll call it App Forms, and I will, let's see, in the interest of time, here's our module. This is the exact same line of code that we added to the button. And so now instead of calling this add-in function in 5 places or whatever, we're just going to call our own function, which we'll call the add-in function. Sorry if that sounds confusing. So here, I'm going to get rid of this and just say open form record list. We don't have to pass it any parameters because now this function is already taking care of that. It's baked in. And then we are going to go over to this host shortcuts module. And you'll find when you get here that there's like this example set up. You know, you can read this text that kind of explains. But it has one, it automatically puts one in there for you, Control-Shift-Y, so you have an easy example to follow. So if I press Control-Shift-Y, it says yellow world, and the caption says this text will be the title of the message box. All right, so yellow world, this will be the title of the message box. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that line, and I'm going to change the Y to a C, and then I'm going to put in the name of that function that we just created over here on app forms. All right, reload the workbook, Control-Shift-C. Now anywhere we're at, where we happen to be, we can just hit Control-Shift-C and we'll have it. We'll have it done. Okay, another good false. Something I want to mention that I didn't is that there's some tasks that are good to do earlier, and there's some tasks that are good to do later. Something like this, like building, you know, a quick shortcut, Control-Shift-C, that's something I would do very early in a project because it saves me time. One, it saves me time. Two, I have to do it eventually. And three, the earlier I do it, the more time it saves me. I don't know. I'll give you, I'm trying to balance time here, so maybe I won't go down that rabbit hole. So basically, so far, everything that we've done has involved remote fields. All right, they can't be edited in the generic edit view. They're sort of like inert. So now what I want to do is add some local fields. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a field called status, and it'll be part of this multifamily rent comp model. And status will be allowed to be values of subject, comparable, excluded, null, or dash. Okay. The subject property, whichever property we tag as status is subject, that's the one that we're appraising. And the comps are the ones that, you know, we're using directly as comparables. And excluded properties would be other properties that are in the area. And as the appraiser, we're explicitly calling them out and be like, we know about this property, we chose not to use it as a comp, and here's why. That's not so important, but now you know what it is. So I'm going to click Add Field. This is going to be a local field because our web database, it doesn't know, you know, which one's the comp, which one's the subject. It's going to be called status. It's going to be a local table field, and it's going to be one of these custom validated. Custom validated lets you, whatever data validation that you put in the top cell for that column, the top data cell, it will apply to the field for all the rows. So let's go ahead and I'll create the field. The way I designed this thing, so this agenda, we're going to hit a problem, right? It says operation blocked. A default value must be provided when null equals false and existing DB records exist. So what that's basically saying is, because we're saying null equals false, that means that for that particular field, blank is not allowed. Okay, it can't be blank, and I'm not giving it I'm not giving it a default value. So we're intentionally hitting this error because it's going to force me to show you resets. So once again, I could just come here, go to multifamily rent comp, and delete all the records. Then the field would migrate, you know, without a problem. But instead, I'm going to show you how the resets work. So I'm taking the whole module. Well, here. First, I'm going to click this button, Reset Workbook. It's going to ask me, do you want to reset the workbook? Yes, I do. And now it's going to tell me, once again, like this is the add-in steering you and helping you. It says, no reset procedures were found. The search criteria for this runner are modules that begin with reset and functions that begin with reset underscore. So any function that we create that matches this criteria will automatically execute and run when we click Reset Workbook. All right, so let's add a module in here called it's got to start with reset. So we'll say reset multifamily. All right, and I'm pasting the whole module in the interest of time. It'll work fine without any of this code. Even you don't even need anything up here. All it really needs is this. So just to prove that, we have 10 rent comps in there right now. I'm going to hit the reset. Yes. Successfully executed one reset procedure in a very small amount of time. All right. And now they're empty. So the reason that this other code is here is sort of like for standardization. It helps standardize things. But if I run this function right here, reset multifamily components, it could be called anything. It will run just the resets on this module. So eventually I might have other stuff that I want to reset with the workbook. And I would just keep adding anything that was reset and multifamily related, on down the line. And so then you can create a command button, and put it wherever you want and call this, and it will just reset the reset procedures on this module. So if you had, reset, I have no idea, some other component or aspect of your project that you didn't want to reset, you would be able to just do multifamily and not do that one. Whereas when you're coming through this global button, it's always going to hit all the reset procedures. So that's reset procedures in a nutshell. And I'm going to pause and then we'll add the status field. Okay, so I told you the status field is going to be restricted to certain choices. And these are the choices right here. So I'm going to create a new worksheet called app constants. And I'm just going to copy and paste this over here. Get rid of the grid lines because I hate them. And then I'm going to create a named range. So you just highlight a region of cells, type the name up here and hit enter, and now we have a name range. Those appear in the name manager, so like choices, wherever they are, property status, right here. You're probably familiar with those, so I'm not going to say anymore. Control-Shift-K, open up this shortcut to go directly to this fields inspector. Add a field, status, custom validated, null is false. Actually, I am going to put a default for dash. And it's a local field. Okay? At this exact moment in time, if I were to run this validate workbook, we get an error. And that error specifically says, custom validated field should have some data validation in the top cell. This is normal if you just added the field. So I'm going to rectify that problem. But what I'm really showing you is that the validation is like constantly running these checks every time you click the button, and it will steer you if you go off course. All right, so let's go find that top data cell. And then I'm just going to do Alt-DL for data validation. Lists equals property choices status, property status choices. Choices property status. Cross your fingers. Cool. I got it right. All right, so now if we run the validation again, it would be clean. It has one warning. When you're messing around, like, adding modules and fields, it sometimes loses a reference to the ribbon. The ribbon will still work for a little while. I don't know. The ribbon it is what it is. But when your end users are using this software and they're not in the VBA code, like moving modules around and changing field types and stuff, you won't really have that problem. All right, so let's add the status field to the list view. And then actually we need to import some records. So import rent comps, 10 properties created. There's our status. Notice they all defaulted to dash. And then I'm going to add it here as well. And the thing to see here is, first of all, it's not disabled like the other inputs. That's because it's a local field. And we can choose, it's going to filter down to the options that are actually allowed. So comparable. Now we would see comparable here. Subject. Sorry, there's a toddler yelling for me in another room. Trying to keep going. Okay, let me pause for a second. Okay, one more thing to see here is that if I try typing in an illegal value, just like scribble scrabble, and I hit save, it's gonna block it and say, you know, it's illegal for this field. It has to be one of the choices that we put in the data validation. So this is one of the ways that this add-in sort of like, it is like a traditional database ORM system, but it's like blended with Excel in a way that everything is hermetic and contained within one workbook. Okay, so let's see. In the, notice how status is like way over here on the right hand side. We want that to be like over here on the left hand side, right after ID. But it's a little bit hard to do right now until I give you some sort of button to like an arrow to move it up. So I'll show you how to do that, how to change that position, and you'll also learn, this will teach you the internals of the add-in. So if I click go to form registry, field registry and form registry are two of those like artifact sheets that were injected in the very beginning when we created the host workbook. Hold on, please. So let's see. It's right here. So I'm just going to take status and move it here. These are the name of the model, the type of the form, and these are the fields that show up. The fields are in there in a CSV, comma separated value format. So you just put the fields with commas in between them, and that's all it's doing. So when you're using the form to specify these fields, like all it's really doing is just mapping it back. You know, it's just dumping the data here for you. But we can modify it like directly ourselves. So now we see status where we want it to, and status is up at the top here. Okay. Notice how there's two subject properties. See, this is where you'll really be able to shine using this software. It's like, you know, an appraiser is going to know that there can only be one subject property. A programmer might not know that. You know, it's the kind of thing you would have design documents and a back and forth and blah, 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 blah. But you know that, okay? You know that automatically. And you're able to write, these validation we've been running so far is all validation that's like built in, like, you know, a custom validated field doesn't have data validation. That's something I can do for you. But the real value of validation is when you use it for business rules, like count the number of properties that are marked as subject status. And if it's more than one, then that's an error, okay? If it's 0, then that's a task that the user hasn't completed yet. Okay, good spot to pause. Okay, let's mess around with the code again. I'm going to go to this coding ABC module. Now that we've migrated and we have this class multifamily rent comp down here, I can uncomment this function and it will not cause any sort of compile errors. All right, so this function is very similar to the one we did with amenities. I'm trying to show you how the dot operator works, how to read a value in the code, and how to write a value back. So it's getting the rent comp database, whereas opposed to this guy, we were getting the amenity database. We're going to call db.getFirstRecord or nothing. So that's going to, if there's any records in the database, it'll give you the very top one as it appears on the worksheet. If there's no records on the worksheet, it'll return nothing. So let's see. There's a few things we want to do here, and we're do them in order. So first, we'll just do a debug print. just like we did with amenity. All right, it's coming out up here. I'm just hitting F5 over and over. So it's showing you the name of the property, its ID, and street address. You know, you can put whatever there. We've already seen that though, so we'll move on. Here, I'm going to try and say prop.name equals some other name. Now, name is a remote field, okay? So it's not going to work. Once again, the add-in is going to give us a clue and be like, hey, this is not something you can change with VBA. The only way to change a remote field, the value for a remote field, is through ingest external records. If you want to be changing a value with code on the VBA side and not go to the database, you just make it a local field. I should add that db.ingest external records, you can include local fields in that. So if for some reason you wanted to have a value come from the database and yet still be changeable here in Excel, you can just let it rip, let it come through db.ingest external records. It'll drop it on the local table worksheet. The data will start out with whatever value the database had, then you can change it. But most likely, you know, you just want to use a local. Most likely you don't want to be changing remote fields. All right, so you've seen that we can't change a remote field, but status is a local field, so we can change that one. So let's go here. Let's go to this worksheet. All right, so get first record or nothing, that should be this record right here. And we're going to say prop.status is comparable. So that cell C1 should change to comparable. It does. We could also do get record by number. So that's going to give you by position. So if I do 0, that would be the same as the first record. If I do 1, that would be the second. If I do 2, that'll be the third. So let's make this third one, let's make it the subject. Hit F5, that's the subject. Okay? Let's move this up to some other random number. Prop.status. Now we're going to do an illegal value, okay? FDDD scribble scrabble. That does not fit within the choices that we defined. So I'm going to run this function now, and we're going to see the exact same thing that generic edit gave us. So like whether you come in through, you know, the generic edit view or with code, like it's all going to route through the same tracks on the add-in side, and it's going to be rejected. Debug, it'll show you the line. That's really nice. If you were writing this code in Python, you know, and trying to connect Excel with Python, it's not going to tell you the exact line and highlight it for you. You know, I could even go up here to view locals window, and it's going to tell you, you know, all this information, like what the current values are in the function. I'm pointing this out because, like, I don't know, there's like a big thing of like using Python and Excel, and I think there's things that you can do with Python that are really useful if they're big, long, deep tasks, and then, you know, the result comes to Excel. But if you're trying to build like a tactical F16 piece of software, you know, to produce high quality work at an accelerated rate, I don't think Python is going to be the way to get you there. That's just my opinion. All right, so now you've seen how it's enforcing the values that we set. And finally, let's go ahead and go through here. Just uncomment this. Bring it back over. Now we're going to do a loop again. For each prop in db.getAllRecords, set the property status to excluded. So I'm going to go ahead and hit F5. All of these values should instantly change to excluded. You would see them up here, excluded. Did I forget anything on this? Here. I didn't, but let's do this. So a way that you might have a script, like say you want a script where the data comes in, it's sort of annoying to change, you know, all of the comps to comp. So let's make this function. This is basically the exact same one as what we did here. And it's called designate all properties as comp. I'm going to hit F5 to run it. Now they're all comparables. Now, what you might want to do, we're just sitting here on this like demo module that I made for you. But you want to organize your code into modules. So I just inserted a new module. I'm clicking on it. I'm going to hit F4. And I'm going to name this multifamily scripts. And then I'm going to go back over to this module. I'm going to take this designate all properties function that we just made. I'm going to put it over here. I usually do this. For you guys, I don't think it really matters, but within one project, option private module doesn't do anything. But I use this on the add-in side to sort of cut down on the noise of the functions that you see exposed from the add-in. That way you only see things that you need. And then let's throw a command button on the worksheet. I don't know, just say like comp all props. All right, and we'll call this function. Since they're already all comparable, well, maybe let's say we'll make the new status excluded. Hit F5. No, not hit F5. We're going to use this button. Now they're all excluded. So you see how you can sort of string together and like create paint your picture of like what you want your business architecture to look like. Okay. All right. So notice that like even though like we're on the local worksheet, so there's only these dummy local and this status field exists. But it's a little annoying when you're working here that you can't see like the name of this property. This ID is not very helpful. The name is over here. It's on the the remote worksheet where the remote fields live. But we'd like to see it here. So I'm going to show you. I'll show you how to do what's called a relay column next. Okay, for a relay column is like a hybrid sort of thing. And the way I make one is I always go to testcat, and I steal this remote height. All right, remote height is a remote field in testcat. Testcat is sort of contrived and set up in a way to sort of hit a lot of notes, if you will, because I use it for testing. So let's steal this remote height column. Let's see. We're down here. Okay. I'm going to add a new column here, and I'm just going to call this column name. So notice in the past when we do this and we hit recalculate, it detects a migration. It's like, oh, one new whatever detected. So I'm gonna do it now though. Nothing. It doesn't detect anything. Why? Because name is already a field. It's a remote field, so it's not really a new field. The local table is repeating a column that the remote table already knows about. In cases where there is a column on both the remote worksheet and the local worksheet, the remote one always takes precedence in terms of like who owns it. So this column here will truly just be like a reference column for people who are visually on this worksheet. Which basically just means developers, because your end users, you don't want to expose this type of stuff, at least not right in plain sight for them. Another thing you can do with local tables is you can add a row. You can have like an extra row. I think you could even have like a few rows if you wanted, but I just add one. And that's because it has this name range right here that's telling it where the table starts. With a remote table, there is no name range there. Remote tables are like very much leave them alone. Don't add formulas. Don't do anything. Just leave a remote table alone. The local table is where you can get a little quirky. All right, so let's steal testcat. I'm just going to copy all three of these here. Put them here. All right, so this first cell that I copied, see it has all this data validation. This corresponds to the models that exist. So it's going to give you a drop down of all the models. Here should be name, and this getObjectAttribute it's just a VBA function, but you can call it in the worksheet. And really cool trick about functions in Excel in the worksheet is if you put your cursor, like you set it up like this and you hit Control A, it tells you like what the parameters it wants to get. So it wants to get the name of the model, that would be this. It wants to get the record ID, that would be this. And it wants the attribute name, that would be this. Attribute name is never going to move, so that gets a $double. Null return is like if it doesn't exist, or you know, like what do you want to get back? So usually just leave that blank. It won't, if there's truly an error, like if you ask for a field that doesn't exist, like it's not going to give you the null return, because that's something where it really feels like it needs to help you. But if you were trying to get like, you know, the 100th record and there were only 94 records or something, then you would get the null return. All right, so, okay, it's giving an error invalid ID. It's not actually an invalid ID, it's that we're passing in the wrong model. So we want it to be multifamily rent comp. Okay, and another thing to note here is the way this formula is structured is basically saying if this ID, A3, if this is equal to blank, immediately just put back blank. Only if this is not equal to, you know, if this is not blank, then do the work. That's an efficiency thing, because we don't want to hit this function. We don't want to hit the function if we don't have to. So this is just like a way to deflect it. If it's blank, just give us blank if there's no ID. Otherwise, do the work and go get the value. Okay? So now I can just like bring this formula down, and we can see the names of our properties. So that's called a relay column. And now seems like a good time to get rid of this dummy local. We don't really need it. I'm going to delete it. Control-Shift-R to reload. It detects the migration. Column delete. Yes, I want to delete it. Okay, it's gone. The app is getting cleaner. Good time to save and good time to pause. Okay, this is a good time to show you formula rasterization. So rasterization, as I define it, is when you take formulas like this, and if I were to paste over it as values, now only the top one is a formula. And the cases where you want to do that is when you know that the value is not going to change. If it's not going to change, then you can rasterize it. And every time that you sort the function, it will go, or sort the model, which we're going to do in a minute. It'll take this formula in the top for any column that you say rasterize true. It will take the formula, extend it down, figure out the values, and then rasterize it. You know, flatten it down to just the result of the function. And that will speed up your workbook enormously, especially for slow functions, like something that, I don't know, you know, slow functions. And this is a little bit of a weird case because this isn't a true local field. It's a rasterized field. Excuse me, it's a relay column field. So I'm going to just add another one and just say name count, name length. Okay, and let's go ahead and migrate to get that in there. Okay, and then I'm going to make a formula here and say it's equal to just the number of characters in the name. Okay, so we should see name length here. We do, good. Let's change this to rasterize true. And let's also change name to rasterize true. Rasterize formula is true. Rasterize, actually, you have two ways to specify it. One of them is at the model level. So rasterize formulas, that'll just automatically apply to everything in that model. If it sees a formula, it's going to rasterize it. So essentially, if you want some things to rasterize and some not, you would set this to false at the model level, and then you would set for the specific fields that you want to rasterize, you would set that to true. Okay, so let's see. This inspect formulas button will just show you, where the formulas are. I think that in order to have the rasterization, like to have it trigger, because it's not automatically going to do that just when you click this deep recalculate button. It would just be too presumptuous. So when it does it is when we sort, when we click this sort records button. But the problem is we haven't defined any sort columns yet. So I'm totally going out of order here, but let's go ahead and get the sort columns. So the sort columns for this model is going to be on status, program, and then name. So let's actually first sort on, apologies for clicking around so much. Let's first sort on total units, just so you can see kind of how the sort works. Total units. Okay. And then now, so you can see right now there's no particular, rhyme or reason. I'm going to sort, and we should see perfect ascending on total units. That's not because I clicked the column header. Remember, the column header is like it just does it in this list view. It doesn't actually change it. When I say for record in getDB.db.getAllRecords, it's going to return it based on the order it finds on the worksheet. If there's a local worksheet, it'll always take that order. The next thing that you might want to be able to do is say that I don't want it to go whatever it is now. What is it now? It's coming from lowest to highest. I want to do descending instead. So in that case, just put a little dash or a little whatever in front of it. Edit the model, reload. And now if we sort, it should go the opposite direction. Okay? You can put as many sort levels as you want. So same thing as the form registry. It's just a CSV for the sort fields. Let's get rid of this. Oh, and now that we've sorted, you see how everything got rasterized? So let's just do it one more time. These are definitely formulas right here. These are not, but I'll just leave this one alone for now. Okay? And now when I sort, boom, it flattened it. Let's get the advanced sort fields. Instead of doing it through this edit model here, I'll show you where the data lives on model registry. It's just right here. So every time I've been changing it in the form, it's just stashing it on the worksheet. I'm going to paste these sort fields. So these are actually this is a complex one. So status, if we wanted to sort by status, we want the subject to be at the very top, followed by the comps, whatever, dash, excluded, and null. These are not alphabetical though. This is a challenge, because we can't just sort by the status column, because it basically just doesn't work. No matter where, even if you do ascending or descending, the way that that they start with E, N, whatever, it just doesn't work. So you can type in a field name status and then open up brackets like this, and you can put in any sort of custom ordering that you want, and it'll respect that. And essentially, this will be the first thing that it sorts by, and then after it's done, so within all of the comparables, say you have 7 properties among 15 that are comparables, within that cohort, it will sort them by program, and then lastly by name. Oops, we need to have that in there. All right, let's make sure that it's okay. So here's the ordering right now. Look at the program, LITEC market. That's just whether it's like a free market rate property or if it's got, government program rent restrictions and stuff on it. Sort. Cool. Now our LITEC stuff is sorted nicely at the top and our market rate are at the bottom. Within the market rate cohort, it's, all of these properties are excluded. Let's change one of these to subject and some comps in there. All right, this should be like a better sorting specimen. Subject at the top, then the comparables, then the excluded. And I think name actually, I have it sorting backwards with name, but I think name should actually be, it should be forward. It should sort with A to Z. When you put this minus thing, it's going to go from Z to A. I'm just going to leave everything the same right now. Okay, good spot to stop. All right, we are going to pick up the pace a little bit now because I just realized that time is flying by. I'm going to add 2 new fields to the rent comp model. One of them is going to be the edit URL. That's going to let us have a button to just fly to the edit page to make a change, in the web app. And then the other one is amenities. That's going to connect our many-to-many relationship. Okay, so models, fields, add field. Both of these are going to be remote fields. Like the amenities that a property has, like that absolutely, if you're going to change it, like if you find out that a comp that you're using doesn't have balconies, like you don't want to just change it in Excel because then the next person that comes along and uses that comp in 2 months is just going to have the same problem. So this is going to be called, let's do edit URL direct before amenities, and that's just going to be a char field. The difference between a char field and a text field is that in the generic, they're both just text, but in the generic edit view, a text field gets a big input like this notes one up here, whereas a char field just gets a small one like this. So char field is for like a short sentence or something, whereas the text field is for like a big chunk of text. Edit URL, that's definitely a char field. Null is allowed? No. Every single record should have a URL. I mean, it did come from the database. And there'll be no default value. And I'm probably going to hit that thing. Yep. This is where we were supposed to hit the thing that caused me to do the resets earlier. I did that prematurely. So let's reset. All right, now there's no rows in there. The system doesn't have to actually worry about it anymore. Because if you don't give it a default and null is not allowed and you have 10 existing properties, it doesn't know what data to put in the cell for that new column for all the rows that already exist. And what did I say? Char field. And I should add that this is one of your huge advantages. Like when you're actually running, a production web app, like you can't just delete all the data, everybody's data, just because you don't know what to put for the the existing rows when you add a new column. You have to come up with like a whole migration strategy, and it's like that's the kind of stuff that engineers, rightfully need to spend a lot of time thinking about, but you don't. This is what engineers want to do the stuff that we're doing in here. Okay, this is the fun stuff. They don't want to, worry about migration plans and paperwork and other stuff. You don't even have to think about it. Okay, go. All right, and let's add the other one. Is going to be called amenities. All right, now look closely because this is something new. There's 2 like special fields, foreign key and many-to-many. This is going to be a many-to-many, and see how this thing like lights up over here for related model? We have to tell what model we want to point it at. So this is going to be amenities. Okay, create the field. Cool. Now we have no rent comps in here now. It's totally empty. So let's import them. Okay. Now we have 10 rent comps. Let's add both of those fields, edit URL and amenities. All right, so there's the edit URL and here are the amenities. Let's look at, well, we needed to like look at some of these custom methods. So like, see when I click view on web, we have a URL now. So like we should be able to have this application open up our browser and go straight to that website for us. But we need to tell it. It doesn't know. Like I added the field, edit URL direct, but it doesn't know. So here's the clue. Has not defined any behavior for custom get web edit URL. Okay? Let's go ahead and do that right now. So I'm going to go to the multifamily rent comp class module. And look, that code actually came from, it was injected by the add-in, that message box you were seeing. Most of the message box you see, the code lives here on the add-in side. But for some of them, I just put it in here because I think it will help you. So we don't need anything here. All we need to do is set the return value for this function equal to me.editURLDirect. To return from a function in VBA, you just take the name of the function somewhere in there and you set it equal to something, and then elsewhere in the code, when you call that function, that's what you'll get back. You know, because we're sitting here right now, we might as well just let's throw something in here too. So here I'm going to turn like VB red, VBA.color constants. These are the colors that you have that are like built into Excel. I have other colors too. So this would be like a fully qualified path going through all these dot operators, but you can also just type in VB blue. I think that's what most people do. The only reason I did that qualified path is so I could show you what all the choices are. I think if I just do VB, like look at all the different things that start with VB. It's like way too many things. All right, enough on that. VB blue. All right, and now let's go back to the list view. Now everything's blue. So obviously you can see that we could put logic in here. Like if the program is, you know, affordable or LIHTC, make the row blue, otherwise make it red. Like I'll expand that logic in just a second. But let's check out that edit URL and make sure it works. So like Riverwood Commons, view on the web. It opened it up over here on this side. Let me just do sorry. All right. From the top. That's what it would be like for your users, all right? So then they can make a change, settlement estate, senior housing, YOLO, all right, I can change it. And then over here, so you can see it still is, you know, settlement estates, whatever. If I import the rent comps again, now we got the YOLO. All right, so that's the pattern. You want to make it really easy for users. Just go, change data, come back, resync. I'm going to do the color right now too. So again, in the interest of time, I want both the units and the properties to both models to be like green for comparables, blue for the subject, red for excluded. I'm talking about the status. So over here on multifamily constants, there's a little function here, get rent comp list view color. It takes the property status as a string, that means text. So comparable, subject, excluded. It runs through this little select case where it just takes that property status and checks. Is it equal to subject? Then the color is going to be this. Comparable, this. And I put the colors here. I just break things out into constants a lot. Note that I'm using like whoa color strong green, whoa color disabled. I just invent you're not restricted to those colors, VB red, VB blue, whatever that I showed you, those 8 colors. You have the full spectrum gradient of colors. So if you find one you like, I recommend you pin it to a constant, and then anywhere you want to use that color, you just reference the constant instead of copy pasting some long number everywhere. All right, so let's take this. Let's go back to rent comp, and let's say this color thing is, we're gonna call that function and then say me.status. So this will resolve to whatever status the user has selected. And now let's load it again. All of them are gray. Why? Because we haven't set any of them to anything yet. Now this one's green. We could go to our handy button, which I would never leave a button here, just to be clear. Let's make them all excluded. Now they're all red. Change one to comp. Change another one to subject. I know the button here says like comp all, but we changed it to excluded. All right, sort the records. Did you see it sorting behind? Watch, let's take this bottom one and make it a comparable. All right, keep your eyes on the worksheet. Arbors at Bastrop, sort records. Boom, it flew up. As opposed to when we do stuff here, it's not actually affecting the worksheet at all. All right, so we've seen edit URL direct. Let's look at the amenities now. So I'm going to double click to get in this edit view, and I'm going to add the amenities here. Okay. There it is. So amenities is a remote field. We're not allowed to change it. So when you open this up, did I make it a remote field? Yeah, I did. You see how I can't, I'm trying to click, nothing can happen. It's disabled. If amenities had been a local field, you'd be able to click around and change things, and then hit save. So what I wanted you to see, but I've failed completely on, is that by default, how did the system know? How did it know to show this nice hot tub, picnic area, playground? How did it know which multifamily multifamily amenity field that would be useful for the person to see? Because what you usually see is, let's see, let's go to test cat. What you usually see is this, the name of the model followed by the ID number. I just call it the SSN, social security number, because it'll be unique. But I forgot to scrub out something when I was doing this. And what I'm getting at is there's one of these methods, custom display record, repr. This is emulating Python. This is what would be here by default. When you just create the new model, all you'll see is this record instance. It sets it equal to this. I don't know. I'm moving along, but I'll show you now. Let's see. So see, it's not very friendly. It's well, great. How do I know even what amenity that is? So for all of your models, you can set this value, override whatever this default one is, instead of just showing the SSN, and just say, me.name. I mean, you could just return donkeys, and then they would all say donkeys. But that's what it came from. So you essentially have your getters and your setters. All this is factory code, and then this weird hybrid methods here. These are optional. So you don't have to do these, but if you do change it, it will respect it. See, this is the default color. It's public missing index. That's just -1. And that just tells the add-in that the user hasn't done anything here yet. All right, that is a good time to pause. All right, let me throw there's one more sort of category of procedure that lives on these class modules. And that is functions that you just completely make up yourself. So I've got one for days ago surveyed. in the interest of time, I'm just going to put it in. This looks at the effective date and says how long since, how many days has it been since we called this property and updated the rents. And you know, if it's been 2 years since you've updated the rents, that is not a good, that is not a good thing to use. That data is not fresh enough to be suitable for an appraisal. So now we have this method that the add-in didn't create it. It has nothing to do with the add-in. It's just something that we needed on the business side. So let's go and note that in like this list view, it's not going to know. It's only going to offer us true fields here. But once again, there's a back door. On the form registry, you can come down here to the list view, and we can put that in there. Days ago surveyed. You wouldn't put it in the edit view. You can't edit a function. It would throw some message box if you tried to do that. All right, and then let's open it back up. Days ago surveyed. That doesn't make sense. Why would it be dash? Because I typed in the field name wrong. Because I'm on the multifamily amenity model. I need to be on the rent comp model. My bad. Before I even fix this error, I'm going to hit validate. Oh, well, too late, because I already added it, the right thing. But what I wanted to show you is if I just had some, you know, something that didn't exist. So for rent comp unit, I'll just add this scribble scrabble and validate. It's going to get it. It's going to tell us this field, you know, does not exist, blah, 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 blah. So again, that's the add-in steering you. Because as you build up your app and things get more complicated, this validation becomes indispensable to like quickly diagnosing problems. So I'll validate it again. Notice it doesn't like put it back to the gray color there. That's, you know, an example of a task that I would defer possibly forever, like, because I don't think it really matters. All right, let's make sure days ago surveyed works. It does. So we'd see like some of these are really old. You could have made your custom color logic something where like if the days ago surveyed is like greater than, you know, 20, make it red. I have no idea. I'm just trying to seed your brain with ideas. Okay. We did color, we did sort, we did custom methods. Let's look at the amenities in code. So over here, it's like round 3. Here I did call it db prop instead of db, even though there's only one db in this. All right, so we get a property, get record by number. So it's 0 is the first one, so 1 would be the second one. So that would be, you know, the second row down the street. And then dim amenity as class multifamily amenity. So we've got a prop variable is a rent comp, and we have an amenity variable, which is one of these. I'm going to say for each amenity in prop.amenities.all. That is the key move. This is your many-to-many relation. So like demonstrating many-to-many. Notice prop.amenities.all. I'm going to hit F5 to run this. And we can see these are the amenities that Preserve at Hunters Crossing has. So again, it's a way for you to work with code to like go through and do things that would be very hard to express with formulas. Suddenly, like when you have code and you have this system, you know, wrapping around you, it's like it becomes trivial to express these things and then do things with it. For example, we could add a local field to amenity called like desirability score or something, where amenities that were really great, you know, like swimming pool and hot tub, those would be like get a 9, whereas, you know, blinds or some sort of lower, I don't know, what's a lower amenity? Carpeting would get like something much lower, like a 2. And then for each property, we could loop through and we could see like, okay, you know, property number 2, if you add up all the amenity scores for that property, it's like a 30, whereas property number 1 is only like an 11. You could objectively say almost immediately, okay, you know, property number 1 has much, much better amenities compared to property 2, okay? Without having to look at it and use your judgment. It's like you use your judgment once to set up these scores, and then everybody in your office fights about the scores, and then you know, it creates the foundation for doing things like auto conclude, where you can just automatically conclude, you know, the amenity comparisons, superior, inferior, for each comparable versus the subject. And then obviously as a human, you're going to look over that and say, I agree or I disagree. But it provides a really nice starting point for you where things that are just like really obvious are sort of categorized for you. And then if you don't like the results, if you're like, wait a minute, I disagree, then you can go back and you can tune those weights. Something I didn't mention to you earlier, but like in the reset script, you know, we could have just gotten each database and then done, you know, db.delete all record rows or whatever. This just saves a few lines, delete all db table rows by model. It's probably like a 4-line function. But what I want to say is that I deleted the units and I deleted the rent comps. So like this reset script, we would be running this like when we finish developing and we want to release a new version of our workbook for our colleagues. We run the reset script to scrub the workbook to 0. I don't delete the amenities. Like it would just be pointless. Like there's no need to delete them. They don't change. And I'm telling you this because if you had a desirability index in there and you deleted the amenity model, you would lose that field. The only way you'd be able to retain it is if you had it in the web database and it was pulling through each time. All right. So that's how you work with many-to-many, and I'm pausing again. Okay, let's go ahead and add the other field relation. So looking back here, we've built this connection now, and you just saw it, the many-to-many between the multifamily rent comp, the property model, and the amenity. Now let's build this loop, this one here. So you haven't even hardly seen the unit model at all. It's just, this is, you know, represents each floor plan. It's these guys down here. And I'm going to add a new field here. It's going to be a remote field, and it's going to be called parent property, and it's going to be the other special field type, which is foreign key. Once again, the related model pops up, and we're going to point it to multifamily rent comp. It cannot be null. It does not have a default. Create. Okay. There it is. All right, so let's go ahead and reset everything back to 0. And then let's go to imports. And I'm going to get rid of this old like bash drop one. And we're going to use, well, we're still using bash drop. I don't want to go through this code. The only thing that I want to show you in here is that sometimes you need to, like this was very simple one that we had where we just took the data directly from the remote source and immediately ingested it without making any changes. But sometimes you do need to make a change. So here it's going through each subject in the remote records. So this is a collection and it's full of dictionaries, and each dictionary is just one row in the database, or one row in the table worksheet. And if I have my little JSON thing, I do. So what are we doing? We're taking the value in the subject for state and we're changing it to state code and county to county name. So you can see here, state and county, these are ID numbers. So in the remote source, the ID number of Bastrop County is 2351 and the I-2531. And the ID of the state of Texas is 44. But it also has, I think, these. So state long, state code, and county name. So state long is Texas, the state code is TX and Bastrop. So in our system, though, we're not doing any sort of foreign key. It would be useless to us to see in the list view, for the state to say 44. Like, it doesn't mean anything. So, but we still want to call our field state and county. So we're basically just overriding and saying, no, get rid of this. This was like 44, change it to be TX. And we do this right here before we call ingest external records. So sometimes during an import, you have to do that. And it's nice to nip it in the bud rather than have 1,000 if statements or have like a table where you do a VLOOKUP between like 44 and Texas or whatever. It's like just nip it in the import and then you have a very clean base to work from. All right, so I should hit a compile error now because these are all private functions. This is the one that we're going to call from outside. Yeah, so we're going to replace the command button on the home sheet. Instead of calling the old function, we're going to call the one with units. All right, let's make sure there's no more compile errors. All right, so now amenities are always there, but our rent comps and our units are totally scrubbed out. I'm going to hit the import button. This one doesn't have any message box or anything, but it should have given us like a debug print over here. Yeah, so for the rent comp model, it created 10 records. For the unit model, it created 59. So among these 10 properties, there are 59 different floor plans. We can see the units are here. Let me pause for a second and then I'll look at the code. All right, let's look at some code. I don't even have one for this, so let's just make round 4. Foreign key relation. Don't want that prop thing anymore. Didn't even use that variable. Cool. And this is going to be called getDB multi hit control space. Get the unit one, dim unit as class. For each unit in db.getAllRecords. And we'll debug.print unit.id. Let's just say, unit.id, unit.parentProperty.name. You see the way I'm like telescoping through here? I start with the unit, which is just one of these multifamily rent comp units. And then I'm saying parent property, and then I'm saying .name. So the add-in under the hood, like because we said it's a foreign key, look, it's not returning like a string or like the ID. It's actually returning, we're on the rent comp unit class module. It's going to return an actual object of the parent property. That's why I can telescope through like that. So when it gets to here, this segment that I've highlighted, that will resolve to a property. And then the dot operator will expose, all the fields of property. So let's go ahead and run it. Cool. So those are the units, their IDs. Probably something that would be useful would be in the rent comp, the parent property. We could have a function down here called associated units as collection, dim unit collect as unit collection, dim unit for each unit in DB, get DB multifamily rent comp unit. I'm not going to bother carving out a variable because I only need it in one place. Get all records. If unit.parentProperty.id equals me.id, add it to the collection. Remember when I said like dictionaries and collections are very important? Those are like 2 data structures you need to know. Like, look, there's only 4 things that you can do with a collection. You can add to it, you can get the count, and you can like remove something. And it's similar for a dictionary. It's not like you're learning a whole textbook here. They're very, the term data structure sounds very intimidating. But like under the hood, like a lot of this stuff is very simple. It's just like dressed up with lots of fancy language when you read technical literature. The principles are super simple, and I wish that the literature wasn't so haughty. All right, so if this particular unit, we're looping every unit that exists, and we're checking, hey, for that particular unit, for this unit, does the parent property ID equal me.id? If it does, then add that unit into the collection. At the end, we're going to say set associated units equal to unit collect. I explained this much better in other tutorial videos that are already out there. But the set operator is because this collection is an object. Whereas these things like long is just a number. So we just say days ago equals, this is just a string. So we don't see the set operator in any of these, but we do see it here because it's returning an object. So objects would be any of these things, or dictionaries, collections, DB's an object. Okay. Do you think it'll work on the first time? Let's find out. Set prop equal to get DB, get first record or nothing, dim. We already have dim to unit variable up here, so I'll just keep using this one. For each unit, steal this actually, units at prop.name. Get associated units. What did I call it? Just associated units. Unit dot, I don't know. What should we do? I guess just feds times their x. Bath. I think that'll work. All right, let's get rid of this. At least get rid of the debug print. Okay, so now we're about to see the foreign key coming through. If I haven't made any mistakes. Putting my cursor in here and hitting F5. Units at Bastrop Oak Grove. So now you can start to do things like sum up the rents, figure out the square footages. If we want to loop through every floor plan this property has and tally all the square footages, we could get the net leasable area. If we had the architectural plans, we could get the total gross building area of the building and then deduct the net leasable area, and you can figure out what's the efficiency of the building. Like, if you have a bunch of hallways and common areas, like that's not yielding you any direct like income. I better stop talking about that. All right, so that is foreign key. Pause. Okay, I will end this video here, and I'll do a part 2. It'll be very brief. I'll just go through those other 2 projects. Recall our plan here was to like go through, build out this appraisal template, and then the other 2 things we wanted to do was look at the full version of this appraisal template, like in a sort of more production setting where it's doing things that should be relatable to you. And then look at that expense classifier project that hits up ChatGPT and does some work. So let's end this one here, and thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please email me. Let me know what your questions are. You can get email at this website, whoa1011.com. Just scroll down to the very bottom and click contact. I don't want to say it here because it might change. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.